All right, welcome. Thank you guys for being here tonight. I know it's kind of late and everything, but I just wanted to knock this interview out. This is, my 12th Tech Talk, and I got a very special guest in the building. I'm excited to have him on. It's Chris Titus Tech uh, from the YouTube channel, uh, and I thought he would be great to bring on to try to just get some, information on how to get into the IT field, just bring that information out to, different people or new people that are trying to get into the field. That's why I do these streams just to help people. But I appreciate you being here, Chris. How you doing, Chris?
Doing all right, Josh. How are you, man? Looking forward to doing this. I've have a lot to share, so look forward to talking to your audience.
Oh yeah. I appreciate you being here, man, again. But I typically like to start off the interview by asking you to give a little bit of introduce yourself and then give a little bit of your background.
Well, I'm Chris Titus. I've been in the industry for about 20 years now. Started doing YouTube videos just like 2018, late 2018, and just slowly been kind of building that out while also working full time in IT, which I've been able to go part time now, which I still do that. But I started out just as regular tech. I don't have any college. I have like a couple, probably about a year of college before just dropping out because I didn't particularly, let's just say college was not aligned with me. And I just wanted to jump into the workforce and just go. So I just kind of built my way up from just a line level tech all the way up to a director position for probably a Forbes 500 company. And, I think at the height of all that, had about 2,000 users and a team of people that I was in control of, and thankfully been able to step back from such a high stress job to kind of where I'm at. So I've seen a little bit of everything throughout my years and have a lot of stories. That's for sure.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's kind of like me, man. I've been in, well, not that long, but I'm headed that direction. But so how did you get into the IT field? Like, is this something that you ever always wanted to do, or uh, just how you kind of what brought you to tech, so to speak?
So I've always loved computers. Like even as a kid, as soon as I could get my hands on a computer, I got my hands on like an 8086 way back in the late 80s, early 90s. And it wasn't until like probably the 486 days and Windows 95 that I was really just like fascinated with them. I didn't even play like console games really after Super Nintendo. So to date me a little bit, probably in that early 90s, I moved everything to computers and just kind of obsessed with them. But like everybody, getting started in the field was very difficult. And I would say I did sales, I did like retail management for a little bit before I actually was able to break into tech. And how I broke in was through that avenue. I actually just networked with folks and then was able to get a tech job saying, hey, I've done this stuff. I can do it, and I can do it better than a lot of your other employees. Just give me a shot. And it took a little bit of convincing, but my boss was like, all right, go for it, Titus. And that's how I got going. And that was 2003, 2002 when I did my first tech support job, and that was with Best Buy back then, right as they were acquired by Geek Squad back in that transition.
Oh man, I was I was 18 years old when you started that, man. Just out of high school, man. But
Yeah, I wasn't too far ahead of you, about five or 6 years. So I
mm,
actually got started pretty early.
cool. So like if let's just roll right into the next question. If someone was trying to get into the IT field, where do you think they should start? And this is kind of like the meat of the conversation. I know, try to
Yeah.
stick here a little longer.
Yeah, no. Like when it comes to getting started, that's always the tricky thing. And IT is such a broad field. A lot of people think, hey, if you're good with computers, you just must be good at all the stuff in IT. And that's just not the case. Everyone has their specialties. And I'm a kind of a jack of all trades. I know a bit about everything. There's certain things I do specialize in, usually anything with Windows Server. I'm your guy. Doesn't matter what it is. I usually can take that and run with it. But when you get started and trying to break in is the most difficult thing for me. And getting that experience was the biggest thing. A lot of people always ask, hey, what cert should you get? What degrees you should get? And really, it's more about I would say it's not about the degrees or certs. They help get your foot in the door, or maybe check check one of those boxes in an interview.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, it's networking, being able to get in. Trying to get like a cold call interview with no experience, that's a tough go. So try to get some kind of parallel tech experience or intern somewhere. Getting that first level of experience is more important than a degree or a cert. Not to discount those, they do hold some weight in an interview, but at the end of the day, it's what can you do, and prepping for that is probably the biggest thing.
Okay, cool. So, do in order to get those? I know nowadays, in order to get those, a lot of those tech interns, college is somewhere where you find those interns, and
Yeah.
they use some of your experience in college to kind of help you uh, achieve those interns, because that's considered somewhat experience as well. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Right. So I hate college. Like
Yeah.
I'm just in that camp. I'm if you're watching from not America, just know growing up, it was, hey, if you don't get a college degree, you're a loser. You're not going to amount to anything. And that's basically what I was told growing up. And after going through a year of college and the professors, I was like, this is ridiculous. I'm spending all this money and I feel like I'm not getting what I feel like I should get. What you get from college is really networking and talking to folks, and internships and those types of things are possible. They open up some opportunities. But for me, I was like, screw it, I'm just going to go a different route. And when I got in and I was doing desktop support and just real line level stuff that pretty much I think everyone can get in and do with no experience, I had a good friend of mine that had already the experience and the job working for businesses and doing that. So what I did was I just kind of was like, hey, man, you need help with this? And he's like, yeah, dude, you're not going to learn jack doing desktop support. If you want to get into servers, you need to come on with me, but I'm not going to pay you. And I was like, all right, that's cool, man. We'll go out. And I would actually just finish my 9 to 5, went to do a little migration with him and helped set up the server and just kind of got to shadow him. And that was kind of like my very first break-in. And his name was Mike Medeiros. And he was kind of the person that I was able to so much mentor, but also just kind of get my foot in. And we've worked together at like 5 or 6 different jobs now.
Wow.
It's been wild how a lot of those early relationships from 20 years ago have mattered. And how we first met is just ridiculous. He was a supervisor for Fry's Electronics, not even doing any kind of tech stuff. He just had a tech background, but it's very interesting. I can't emphasize enough establishing those relationships. Don't burn bridges, those types
Yeah.
of things, because you just never know who you're going to run into.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. And I have a lot of stories like that where I've just run into people that you would never think in 1,000 years would be in that tech field. Where I think from Geek Squad days, I ran into people 10 years after I had left, and they were working for a different like law firm that I was interfacing with. I mean, just crazy stuff like that. So always be nice to people.
Oh, yeah.
Always. I see too much. A lot of people are you see some elitism a bit in the IT industry, and it's real important not to be that, and also be personable. There's so many just basic things that I say a lot of technicians just forget. A lot of times they think it's what you know, but it's really who you know, and that it's just so true in so many ways.
Yeah, so you can't be that geeky guy sitting in back in the server room no more. You got to be more personable.
Well, so yeah, I've done both. So it's kind of
Yeah, I've done
funny.
it too.
I was a director position, and that position I actually got a lot of hands-on and also had to manage a whole team. So I was working a lot in that type of thing, but it was nice to kind of pull back. And now I'm working part-time for a small business, and I love just going in and I go in about 2 days a week, and I don't know, there's something magical about just fixing a computer or fixing a person's problem, where I'm nobody of any prestige in that position. I'm just their tech guy that they can just say, hey, I need this done. And it could be the most simple thing, but there's a lot of enjoyment in that. And I love that aspect, coming back down from being a director and managing people. I think a lot of people fantasize about management and those types of things and executive positions. And I've been there, and I gotta say, I didn't enjoy it. It was not very fulfilling in my point, but kudos to those that want to go for that.
Hmm. Yeah, I know it's probably kind of stressful, dealing with the budgeting of running like a IT department because it's always like bare bones, based on the people that I've worked to and their grief that they've given me about it.
It's always that way, and no, I think every single IT department's like underfunded, unless like a
Yeah.
hack just happened and then the company lost like millions. Then of course their budget goes to like, oh, we need to fix that.
Hmm.
So I love that meme where the guy's like, okay, here's the IT security budget, and he's counting pennies, and then after the ransomware attack, he has like $100 bill stacks just all over the place, and I'm just like, yes, that is so true. But it's important to um, be able to break down complex technical things into simplistic ways to digest. A lot of people don't realize when they're talking to a CTO or CIO or even a CEO, if you get that high, a lot of times they just want a certain objective met. And you need to be able to break down these complex problems into simplistic or bite-sized things for them to be able to digest it. Because if you're not saying, okay, if we don't update this NAS box, we could have a crash, and if we have a crash, then well, we could have hours of downtime. Every single minute we were down, that would be about $5,000. And when you put it in that type of language, they're like, okay, so we should get that done, because if we do go down, that's going to cost us, let's say we go down for a whole day, it's going to cost us probably $1 million. And then they're like, okay, well, that $100,000 price tag on that NAS box no longer looks bad. And it's those types of things where really separate when you get into that field. And I think starting off, when you do that, always try and talk through your problems, or be able to reiterate back to your client, hey, this is what's wrong, and then here's how I'm going to fix it, and try and tell them without their eyes glazing over.
Hmm.
And you're going to definitely fail a bunch at that, but my favorite, it's just one of those things you have to learn to break down some, these real complex problems into simplistic ways for folks to digest.
Yeah. Well, you kind of well, before you get to that, thank you, Kenny Conjo and Topaz for the cash apps. I definitely appreciate it. But you kind of said something that made me think of another question. Um, have you ever done consulting, like on your own, like as far as like a business or working for a company that consulted?
You're right. So I've done briefly, like I did some contract work before I landed in house at a law firm. So it would probably been uh, mid to late 2000s. I worked at a contractor where we go into businesses. SMBs back then were all the rage, and every SMB had usually a server of some sort. These days, you really just don't see this, but usually there'd be a salesperson, and I would be the technician, or the one that would be able to say, okay, these are all the things they need. and then usually you'd have someone to lean on to help sell it, or they would sell it for you, and you would just answer any technical questions that would happen. So you do see that, and I don't know if that exists in today's world, as
Mm-hmm.
again, that's like probably 12 or 13 years ago. But it's something that I was really thankful for that experience. But to do the consulting port now, a lot of times I just like to give away the knowledge for free. It just feels weird, and I should figure out a way to, open up shop, so to speak, and just do consulting. But a lot of times I I I would hate to say this needs to be done and then have another technician come in and screw it up.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit of a perfectionist in that result, where I'd actually like to oversee that and say, hey, okay, this is exactly what needs to be done, and then either help assist with it, or that way. But yeah, I should probably do a lot more consulting, as I did enjoy back in the day looking through going, okay, this is all wrong. Here's exactly what we need to do to fix it. Where when I run into that nowadays, usually I have a budget and I can just be like, oh, cool, I'll just do that next quarter, or I'll fit it in this quarter, depending on what was happening with the business.
Okay. Cool. Cool. Well, let me go ahead on and roll right into the next question, which I typically ask, how do you keep your technology skills current? So, I mean, if you can, please elaborate. So,
Yeah, so there's two ways to approach this question, and two answers, I should say. There's the literary portion of a knowledge that you need to know to be able to, just have to where you can actually do a straight up conversation with someone that's in the tech field. And then there's the actual practical portion of it. So read, obviously, for the
yeah.
literary portion, and always be asking questions, or always be on message boards, those types of things. And honestly, a lot of times I envy a lot of people coming up, because you have YouTube
Yeah.
that you can get all this knowledge that I was just like craving back when I was starting, and there's just nowhere to really be found. Like Expert Exchange, you could pay like $10 and read a bunch of questions, I think, back then. And I did. But the nice thing now is you can have YouTube and all these other learning platforms where you can learn it, but also being able to practice it, having a lab at home for those that really are just
Exactly.
trying to develop their skill set. You don't want to be that cowboy that just like the very first time on the job gets up there and just breaks the server because he doesn't know what he's doing.
Yeah.
So having a lab environment is really important, and just know you're going to break a lot of things. And even today, I always try and break at least a handful of things a week. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what I always say. I need to fail or break things to learn, and that's how I always approach it. And I don't want to do that obviously in a business, but when I get into here, man, it's something I look forward to. I'm like, hey, how can I really mess this up? And then once I do, how do I fix it? And that's where it's just you can learn and grow so much, because if you're constantly just doing everything right and following the guide exactly however it was written, it probably eventually, you probably get there and it'll be fine. But it's really, you only learn when you fail. And
Mm-hmm.
it's very important for people to be accepting of that.
Yeah.
No, you're going to be terrible when you start, and you're just going to, things that take you 5 hours is going to take me 5 minutes. But that's because I've done it for that long. And just know, back when I started, it took me 5 hours. Everyone starts in the same place. And, that's why I always try and instill in my kids whenever I'm teaching them. I'm like, hey, don't ever be afraid to fail, because you can't succeed without failure. There's only
Exactly.
people that quit, and those that, just keep failing until they actually achieve what they're looking for.
Yeah, and I mean, I actually put my kids through some coding language, well, some coding classes online. Is pretty cool. And then I went in and looked behind my youngest son one day, and sitting there coding a game. You know what I'm saying? That technology is right at your fingertips. That is what I'm trying to say. You know what I'm saying? For a lot of people that are coming up, like you said. Yeah. And
Yeah.
also, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no, like for your kids and stuff, or those that want to code, get starting out. There's a fun little site called Code Combat. Code Combat, I think .com. I could be wrong on that, but it's a fun one. So if anybody out in the crowd wants to learn like Python or something, start there because it's amazing. Like I got my 9-year-old learning Python, which is ridiculous. But yeah, sorry to interrupt, but I just like
Nah,
that's
nah.
something that just kind of jogged my memory. I'm like, man, I love seeing people learn things. It's
Oh yeah,
amazing.
yeah, yep. And that's one thing in the IT field. You every day you're learning something new. So I mean, Chris is right about that. Let me ask you this. And you do have a currently have a degree in everything, or no?
No,
Or
no,
okay,
I dropped out of college about 2 semesters in, so I didn't even make it to sophomore year,
okay,
and I took some computer concept classes, public speaking. I would say the public speaking was probably the best class I took in college. That was the one that I've used and has been extremely valuable. I wouldn't say you necessarily need it nowadays because live streaming,
yeah,
that is such a great tool, and it's like if you want to be a public speaker for anybody that cares, this live streaming, do it over and over and over, and you will get to be where when you walk into a front of a room of people, there's no difference than the camera. So like this past week I had to give I was actually a best man at my childhood friend's wedding, and there's like 30 people there, but I was able to do the toast and those types of things and do it in a way that really it was impressive to a lot of folks because of the public speaking from just live streaming, and also leaning back to even those public speaking courses from college. But getting back to your question about college, like I said, for me, I was doing computer concepts and I got to C++, and it was kind of demoralizing because a lot of the teacher was not well prepared and not well experienced. And a lot of the lessons, I felt like I was helping other people out in the class more than the teacher was.
mm,
And I was like, I'm literally just paying people to teach others, and I'm not getting anything from this class. And then it was just like, I'm done. I'm paying thousands of dollars for a semester where I'm getting very little in return, and that's when I was just like, I'm just gonna do it and get out there and luckily it worked out for me. I know that's not exactly the best advice for a lot of folks out there, but I would say this: get some experience if you can, and if you're gonna start with a cert, that's where I go. There's a lot of tech schools now that just didn't exist back then that would be good starting places as well, where I think you could get a lot more from a tech school with placement, mock interviews, those types of things that you get. Because I think when I was coming up, I think the only one I can remember was DeVry. If you guys
mm,
remember those commercials on TV from like
yeah,
20 years ago, I remember they were something, but I never even looked into them back then.
yeah. That's good information. Oh, and one thing I like to always put out, uh, you guys need to check out edX. Dot I believe it's .org or .ed. edX is a great resource though. They have a lot of courses out there for um, that come from like Ivy League schools like Berkeley. They have a lot of good courses that you can take
Yeah.
for free. That it's a great resource. So you can get like what they call micro degrees. They have micro degrees, and you can pay for the certificate. It costs money at the end of it, but you can take the 100% of the course for free. So it's a good resource. And so, do you think?
That's awesome.
Yeah. Do you think that people should go for degrees nowadays? Especially like, I mean, think about the things that are going on now with the pandemic, or should they kind of focus more on search, or should they do a combination of both nowadays? I don't know. I was just
Yeah, so
curious.
it depends. I think it depends on the person, really.
Hmm.
Obviously, I was very adamant against traditional degrees.
Yeah.
I would say I'm definitely more so as time has gone on, and like just you saying about the edX resource, like I just pulled it up and I was like, God, this is amazing. Like my struggle with what I was talking about in college, my professor just sucked.
Yeah.
just let's be frank. But if I was going to like Berkeley or Harvard, I mean, I know those professors can't suck. I mean, they better not for charging like 100,000 for a year or whatever it is now.
Definitely.
Um, so being able to get those type of resources from stuff they've done for free from something like edX or a lot of online courses from Udemy or
Yeah.
heck, even Skillshare and those other ones. I mean, I think a Pluralsight I've used a lot. Lydia, gosh, there's just so many to learn whatever skill you want. And you can't go wrong learning a skill, learning something new. That's the biggest thing, and the biggest thrill I get is when someone learns something new from me.
Okay, cool. And if anybody's interested, I put edX's link into the chat, and I'm actually looking for code combat. I throw that in the chat as well. But so the next thing I like to try to go to is, or the next question is really a Linux question. Since my channel, is pretty much Linux. I ask everybody this. I try to, ask a question about it. But have you worked in a job, or do you currently work in a job where Linux was used, and how did y'all use it? If you could talk about it.
Yeah, no, of course. Pretty much every job I can talk about
Okay.
extensively, which is nice. I've even gone into salary and everything. So everything's on the table, man. You want to know whatever it is, I can fill you in. Um, in Linux, I think pretty much for the past 10 years, every single job I've had, there has been a touch of Linux everywhere. So the biggest thing coming up was lamp stacks and telephony. So in the early 2010s, I did a lot of Asterisk work and even free PBX. If you guys have seen that project for those telephony folks out there in Linux, I did a lot of setups in the CentOS distribution. So probably three to 4 years of living in CentOS. So that was kind of my getting thrown in the deep end of Linux, where I had to administer, maintain all these for mobile response units and set up telephony using these things. And then past that, lamp stacks has always been kind of I would say a core pillar for anybody that's a Linux admin, which a lamp stack is just Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. Almost all the web runs on this.
Yeah.
So WordPress sites, all those things that do those are all run off a lamp stack for the most part. So I've done some contract work where I've even gone into some of the bigger hosts and had to fix Linux based issues or things they were running into, and that a lot of times I kind of frown on some hosting providers just because a lot of people overload servers, and I don't really like when they throw like 50 websites on one server, and you run into that occasionally. But I've had that, and then going to more small business, you can run into like some intranet type things and set up basic databases where people interface with those. I've set up a couple like I think it was like case lists and things like that for a law firm I worked at, and then going all the way into full blown like CRM type things where that had a lot of interfaces with Linux servers. So usually when I started getting into like Linux desktop and stuff, most of my background's all Linux server, which is all command line based or CLI.
Mhm. Yeah. So, I mean, do you think people that are getting into the IT field should learn some sort of Linux? Because I mean, I always tell them that a lot of things are going that direction. You know what I'm saying? And as far as command line stuff, and just Linux in general.
Right. Yeah. Like probably the best way to emphasize this point is everything you're going to touch at a server level, you're going to need to learn the command line. And a lot of Microsoft servers now, you're really running into it. I read an article just the other day that most of Microsoft's money and their intake is now starting to come from Azure, which is mainly running Linux. So even Microsoft itself is now profiting basically. A lot of more of the profits are actually coming from Linux. And if that's happening to Microsoft, it's something that I think everyone should learn that wants to get in there. So that's just them. But there's never a day that goes by where I don't touch like a Linux server in when I'm at my day job. So it's something that is important. But also you still need to understand that there's other things out there as well.
Yeah, definitely.
So don't just be that guy that's like, hey, I'm a Linux admin, I only touch Linux. I don't touch any of that other stuff. Don't turn your nose up to other operating systems. Keep an open mind and learn as much as you can in being able to interface and being able to bridge positions is really, really vital, and it'll help you with longevity as the IT market itself kind of has seen a shift more towards where security and networking is still in high demand, and the rest of the IT, like system admin work and things that I've specialized in, and that's my jam, is really starting to die off a little bit. And they're not seeing as much growth as it was, which is a little bit sad. But with that comes a lot of advancement with just tech in general. Things that just took a lot longer and required a higher level of skill now doesn't really require much more, which is pretty cool. So the three areas I would say focus on is cloud computing, which relies heavily on Linux, but just learning cloud computing is really important. Spin up a free VPS. There's tons. I mean, your favorite YouTuber, I'm sure, sponsored by some kind of VPS provider. I think I have Linode with me, or whoever. It doesn't matter. Just pick your favorite one, or you can use Google, you can use AWS. They all offer free trials. Spin up like a micro instance, and those run. I think I ran a micro instance for 5 years, getting charged anywhere between 3 and 7 cents a month. So I think I paid like $1 over the several years. And having that and being able to interface with it and just learning more about how cloud computing works is so powerful, because you're able to offload all that stuff at your day job. So the place I'm at right now, I used to work there 40 to 50 hours and it was just nothing but busy. And now I'm there 2 days a week. And frankly, they could probably get rid of me. Hopefully they're not watching this interview. But I mean, that's how little work I am doing compared to what I used to do, because I'm able to just outsource so much through a lot of this cloud computing, where I was always working on hardware or, okay, we need to get this for redundancy. And it just really has changed the game, so to speak. So cloud computing, security, networking, those are the three areas where there's just massive growth.
Yeah. So that, based on what you just said, that kind of ties into another question I typically ask, but IT automation. How do you see that affecting jobs in the future, especially like, have you used Ansible before? But let me go down and let you go. I was going to ask that later. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, no. As far as automation goes, I will say a lot more things are becoming automated. A lot more things are becoming easier. There's still a lot of demand for a lot of these tried and true positions, like, my job, system admin. I think in 10 years, it's just really not going to be, it'll still exist, but not in the capacity it is today, because 10 years ago, it was a way different story. So I can only imagine what 10 more years will bring. So I think when it comes to automation, that's part of it, but a lot more of it is probably just innovation. And as we become more efficient, just as a society and evolve, things will just get easier for us, where you don't need someone like me to set up your server. you can just click a couple buttons and do it. So that's a good thing. And even though I don't necessarily like it because I made a lot of money, a lot of people, know that I'm not a huge fan of Microsoft, but I can't be mad at Microsoft, and I don't hate them just because I've made a ton of money off of Microsoft just because they've built products that aren't friendly to users. And you see this whole new wave of companies coming in that are doing that, because if Microsoft doesn't do it, someone else will, and they have in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm. And thank you for that. So let me ask you this then, programming languages. And I know you kind of already brought up something like, with Code Combat, learning
Mm-hmm.
Python and everything. What do you think some programming languages that people should get into? And I'm sure you're going to say Python, but go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. No, programming languages require a unique mind.
Yeah.
I also want to kind of just throw this out there. Just everyone is gifted in certain ways. There's certain people that just do things better than I do them, or that you do them. It's just everyone has their strong suits. For me, I loved coding, and honestly, I could have probably become a coder, but it's not something I actively explored. And it's I'm hesitant to tell anybody, hey, you should become a coder or do it, because I feel like there's just a certain mind, like almost like the movie The Beautiful Mind, that just they see things differently, like a true coder.
Yeah.
There's some like inherent talent to learning like top-down programming and understanding how it works, to where when I meet someone that's like just gets it, they that one coder is better than 10 other coders
Yeah.
put together. So coding is one of those things. If you're not good at it and you hate it and you're just trying to learn it to make a buck, forget it. Just move on. Just switch, move to a different field or different part of IT, because that's one thing I see a lot of people trying to do with coding. But if you do fit in there, I would say for the coding languages, I would say obviously Python. It's huge, because a lot of this automation scripting, like you brought up Ansible, there's YAML files and other things that really tie into these. You don't necessarily need to learn the entire languages. Once you get the gist of one language, you can kind of read them all, so to speak. Maybe not C, because C is a little bit different, but there's just little nuances to each one. But learning, I think, one language, or just getting a base understanding is valuable in many respects, because even if you don't code a lot, being able to script things is huge. I can't tell you how big that is, where I've come in and been able to put together a script that literally eliminated 10 people's job. And now that's amazing. And that's just the power of just learning the basics. And it's not necessarily a language itself, but I think learning scripting, understanding it, just doing bash scripting, and honestly in Linux, or even PowerShell. I've done a lot of PowerShell scripting. Those things are huge, and they are massive time savers for businesses. When people see what you can do with those types of things and how much time they save, because the past guy did it the old school way, huge difference. It just it changes the game, and it puts you on a different level than other people. And the cool thing that I love about IT is a lot of people can get that initial job, and they'll just kind of hang around. But when you get in there and you do your job and you do something amazing, like creating a great script, people see it. I mean, it's just something that you can say, I did that at the end of the day. And having that experience is so much easier than trying to impress someone with words or BS and all the other crap that we do today. And you'll get to the point where you'll walk into an interview and you'll just have a printout of your experiences, and that printout is better than any resume. It's better than anything you could say in the room. And a lot of times if I go into an interview, like if I was going to do it today, I would just do 2 printouts, one for me, one for the interviewer. I just walk in and just hand them that piece of paper, and they'd be like, oh, well, this is way more interesting than what's your greatest weakness or all the
Yeah.
other canned interview crap that you run into. Because if you get to the canned interview questions, that's when you're in trouble when it comes to interviews, because interviewing is a skill and a job on its own. Honestly, it's a whole different realm where a lot of tech people struggle hard with interviews. And I've given a lot of interviews. I've been on probably 5 to 6, or yeah, probably a little more than a handful myself. And that's one thing with interviewing, I would say, is coming in, getting off script is huge. Like I said, getting off of those canned interview questions, because anytime I talk to someone and they're like, oh, I'm great at this, or I know this about interviewing, and you'll start giving responses to canned interview questions. I'm like, no, you don't want to go there, man. You want to try and build a rapport and hopefully get off of those types of things.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Yeah, and and that's I'm glad you brought that up though, but I was gonna say, and sorry, my memory is, because you're saying so much great, so many great things. But one thing I was gonna hit on as well, that yeah, I use PowerShell scripts all the time, like every day,
Mm-hmm.
to help my job, and make it more efficient. Like with PowerShell, is very important to kind of understand it, because like especially on the Windows side, you can do so many things with PowerShell, managing multiple different servers, across. So anyway, I was just gonna add to it, but
Oh no, man! Like you said with PowerShell, interfacing with O365, every
mhm.
business is on O365 these days, and just think about administering hundreds of email users with PowerShell. That's a huge, huge skill that a lot of people think you have to sit in this GUI that's made by a 3-year-old that works for Microsoft that just takes forever to do anything, or you could just load up PowerShell. A couple commands later, you're like, cool, it's done. Where the other guy would be sitting there just pounding away on the web,
Mhm.
waiting for the web page to reload while he changed whatever it was on Microsoft's front end.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's pretty much it. I normally go in. I mean, you kind of talked about the automation piece, which is mainly what I wanted to talk about, based on what you brought up, and you already hit on cloud computing, which is another thing that's important. How important is, if you want to add to that, to what you said earlier, a little bit on
Sure.
cloud computing. Uh, do you do you think? I mean, that should be something people should try to go into, right? You think?
Right. Like right now, everything, and yeah, a lot of people like to wear the shirt, hey, it's not the cloud, it's just another person's computer.
Yeah.
But really, a lot of these data centers, once you go into them, you get more of a scope of what's going on with them, and it's changed the game, and it's forever.
Mhm.
But business has been slow to pick up on this. A lot of people don't realize how behind the ball a lot of businesses are. A lot of people still are running their own servers, and the big pain point for most businesses is just files and just file management. But there's a lot of other servers on the back end. You have domain controllers, you have a lot of line of business apps sometimes are hosted through these servers. And cloud computing, where you used to have a 44U rack just completely full of boxes that were all had a designated role, and some you had redundant boxes for those, and it was just a different game before cloud really came in. But a lot of people still are on that traditional way and have had a hard time transitioning. So when I say cloud's important, or learning how to interface with these VMs in like just a VPS with any provider, whether it's Azure, whether it's AWS or G Cloud, whatever it might be, you need to learn these, because a lot of IT departments right now are held back by those people that have 2 more years to retire and they can't rework their skill set to include cloud. And that's where a lot of IT businesses are right now. So hammering home learning that, but learning to bridge the legacy stuff with cloud is game changing, because you can create that VPN bridge, start pushing a lot more stuff over there. And as your rack that you go to, whatever business it is, as you start taking more and more stuff and just shutting more and more stuff, you get to the point where you have 4 U's is all you need, or probably closer to 8 U's once you factor in patch panels and switches, depending on the size of the suite. But you get my point. It's just a drastic reduction in actually what you need at a business. And most businesses aren't there yet, and there's not enough technicians that know enough about cloud. Almost every technician I know knows a little bit to really kind of push it a little bit, or maybe even to administer those VPSs, but being able to bridge and push a specific application, like the line of business application they had local, to the cloud, it can really change the game, so to speak. And a lot of people are hesitant to do this because they're afraid, well, it'll eliminate their position, in which in reality, that's probably the truth. And a lot of people are still hanging on. I've run into that position where, I've had someone that was at the end of their career and they just didn't want to retool things because, well, they didn't know it. So.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, and this will be my last question for you before I get to the Q&A. But what certs do you have? Because I think I missed asking you that. Do you have any certifications, and which ones? I don't know.
Sure. I have, I think, about 11 certs. So my very first cert was with Windows XP as an MCP. The next cert was specializing in small business server 2003 SBS. The cert after that was I think a Mac. I think I had like Mac OS Tiger or some crap in there from Apple.
Oh yeah.
I don't know about that one. I don't even have the ID anymore. I probably could look it up though. And then I went into a full MCITP Enterprise Administrator for Windows 2008, which was my favorite Windows server ever made, really, to be honest with you. I loved Server R2. There was not much I didn't like about that server. I still one of my favorites, but I definitely got my MCITP there. And then I branched out to Citrix a bit once a lot more of this came in. Learning how to virtualize apps instead of virtualizing entire operating systems, I thought I was just fascinated by. So I got certified in Citrix. I think it was Zen 6.5, I think, is what I got certified on for Zen App and Zen Desktop. And then funny enough, when I got that cert, I was actually doing a Citrix implementation, and then I implemented, I think, 7.7 or 7.8, whatever it was, and they changed everything. Literally everything I learned in my cert test was not applicable. It was the most ridiculous thing, going from Citrix 6 to 7, because they changed the entire product line to where everything was different. And it removed even the front end, and oh man, I could just go on forever about Citrix. But anyways, certifications. I would say I never went to a class. I never went to an instructor. Most of the certifications I did because I was fascinated with the subject matter, or I really liked the product, and I was just like, okay, cool. And I would just do it in my test lab, and then go from the test lab, and then I would just go, okay, what's the book? And then I would just read the book and go take it. Usually those certs, my MCITP, a lot of people go through like a boot camp. I don't think you really gain anything from that. So if you already know the subject matter, I guess boot camp's fine. But for me, I ended up just doing the MCITP. I think it was 5 different certifications in one. So Active Directory, I think networking infrastructure, couple others in there. I think Vista was in the MCITP one, not 7, to date myself a bit. But I remember I did each one about 2 months apart. So I would just go in and be like, okay, this weekend I'm just going to do that one portion of that test. So I would go in, do some of the, I would learn the material first, obviously. Then I would go and do a couple test, practice tests, and then from there I would just cram for about a day or two. So each cert took me about 3 days to do.
Okay.
Usually, I averaged about I'd start on like a Tuesday or Thursday or Friday, and then usually by the end of that weekend, I was ready to take the test on Monday, and I would just piece all my certs like that. Where if I wanted to get a cert, typically I didn't even pay for it. So a lot of my employers paid for, my employer paid for every single cert except for SBS 2003 because I failed the test.
Mm,
And as long as I passed the test, my employer covered it. I think in 2003,
that's cool.
I failed that first server Microsoft test.
Not that you failed, but that's cool that they paid for it. You know,
Yeah.
that's yeah.
Yeah. So
It's always awesome to find a company when they're willing to actually pay for the certifications and help you out. But another thing you said, I definitely despise the whole boot camps. It's like you're drinking from a fire hose. You know what I'm saying? The amount of information that they try to throw at you in a short amount of time, so it's not worth the money because you don't retain it. You know,
yeah.
so.
Yeah, I mean, boot camps, all they do is just inflate the market with a bunch of paper tigers and these people that just go in and break things. And, they have all the certs. They have all those acronyms after their title.
Yeah.
And I guess that's, I suppose I'm kind of unique in that regard where I just don't care about prestige or the acronyms anymore, just because I've seen too many paper tigers where they had everything and they should have been really good and they just end up not being.
Yeah.
But I mean, on the same result, that's not saying everybody with a bunch of certs are, uh, not technically skilled, because I have run into some that had like 20 certs that were immensely skilled. So
the experience and actually being able to demonstrate things you think is more important than
for
the actual.
sure.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I mean, and business itself, I think, is changing a lot. A
Mhm.
lot of, the late 90s, 2000s, a lot of people's dreams were working for these big companies and these big
Oh
businesses.
yeah.
You got your Facebooks, your Googles, your Amazons, all those. And now I think business itself is changing to where you no longer get that, where a lot of people dream of running their own business or working a certain, when it comes to tech jobs. I think a lot of people, you'll see a lot more freelancers get into this thing because there's just so many facets of it, and create consulting companies and those types of things. And I'd love to see that. I think that'll, really help things along a lot better, because back in, those corporatalized days where everyone just wanted to work under someone, it was, you saw a lot of people just kind of slip through the cracks, where I think right now it's really what can you do. And if you can do stuff, it really does reward you quite well.
Exactly. So let me go down and get to the Q&A. So if anybody has any questions, can you guys type them in the chat for me? I don't want to hold up Chris too long. I know it's late where he is, so I don't want to hold him up.
It's all good either way, because like I said, I used to work my 9 to 5, come home, spend time with the family, eat, and then I would start making YouTube videos about 10 p.m. and just go until it was all the way done. So I had some nights in there where it was 2 or 3 in the morning, and then I'd have to wake up at 9 the next day and go into my day job. So,
well, my wife won't let me get away with that. Yeah, but I see a question for you from Mitchell Valentino. And first off, let me thank you, Mitchell Valentino, for the super chat. He said, "Great interview. This stuff is gold. Very much appreciated." Thank you, Mitchell. Kev Tech IT, I definitely appreciate you, man. I love this interview. Keep interviewing more techs. This definitely helps new people in IT. But Mitchell had a question for you. He said, "How has having a YouTube channel changed your perspective on IT?"
Oh, oh yeah. Um, I think YouTube, it kind of, I love YouTube, first off, mainly because it takes, it's like this wealth of knowledge if you search for it. Where, like I said, but pre-YouTube days, you were always just trying to figure stuff out.
Mm,
And these days, you can do it. But how it's changed my personal perspective of tech is the immediate feedback, like just being a creator on here and having videos out, seeing the immediate feedback you get. And a lot of video ideas came from people commenting. So I absolutely love it both ways. Of course, you get the negative, but a lot of people like to focus on that. But there's so much positive that you can glean from just trying out new things, recording it, and then just chopping it up in post, and then just putting together a nice 10-minute video that will deliver value to people. And it also kind of taught me, as far as perspective wise, I love teaching people certain things. Like a lot of people do YouTube for a lot of different reasons, but for me, when I get someone that learns something new from a video I do, that's amazing. It's just such a great feeling. It's hard to describe. Where that's definitely changed my perspective, so to speak, in how I approach things. Where I get a lot of enjoyment out of that, more so than my day job.
cool, cool. Let me ask you this other question. Professor Black Ops, he asks, "What are your thoughts on serverless computing?"
Yeah, so serverless is really interesting. It's still kind of in its infancy, but um, I love the idea of like this decentralized computing, that it'll do it. So serverless itself, like when you're looking at Lambda and that type of stuff from AWS, I'm not well versed on it, and I think it's going to look like something different in several years. So we'll see what happens with serverless. I absolutely love. I think I did a video over Netlify and deploying basically a serverless website where any like ChrisTitus.com runs on that. I literally just do a GitHub commit and it just deploys out to basically a CDN that Netlify runs. So no matter where you're at in the world, it just builds it, deploys it, and it doesn't actually reside on like a central data store anywhere. Even if GitHub goes down, the website still stays up. So
Wow.
it's kind of that same kind of thing. It's really neat. But going even further past that, when it comes to serverless, you have blockchain and how that's interfacing, and seeing how a lot of those projects are going. Like a lot of people don't realize I'm heavily in the blockchain and cryptocurrency space, where even though I don't really talk much about it on YouTube,
Yeah.
it's something that a lot of the projects are game changing. And you have things that are changing, like the inventor of voice over IP. He created something called money over IP, where it's basically removing banks from the equation and doing, you probably maybe heard of decentralized finance if you're in the space,
Yeah.
where it's basically giving you massive interest on accumulating uh, your money. So like, let's say you have $1,000, you could be gaining, 5 to 10% interest on that in cryptocurrency. And it's really interesting. I'm really, it's still early with this. Obviously, you're going to have these massive swings and it's really volatile. But I think that's really where a lot of the future goes for tech, and then how technology will influence the world going forward. Oh, there's just so much excitement, so many exciting things with that blockchain and those types of things. I really look forward to the days where I never have to go to a bank again, where I think banking, or traditional banking as we know it, will be basically removed, much
Yeah.
like I think a lot of server admin stuff, where they may still exist. It's just going to definitely be the minority.
Yeah. Exactly. Um, so see, I got one other question here. Not sure what he. Well, I mean, I understand what he's saying. Um, what do you guys think about Ryzen 5 versus i5 processors? Well, I mean, if you wanna hit it, Chris, you can, but
Sure,
um,
sure, yeah.
give your thoughts.
Um, I'm not a huge hardware guy. You know,
Yeah,
when I
me
said
neither, and
earlier where
that's
I was like, hey, you know, there's a lot of people ask me like that whole generalizing tech and saying, hey,
mm-hmm,
you're good at this portion, you must be really good at this
yeah,
portion on hardware. But from a software perspective is really where I view this. So when I give this answer, please know I'm not a J's 2 cents. I'm not benchmarking the two. I'm not doing all those crazy tests. So my take is this: AMD is great when you need a lot of threads and horsepower, say rendering a video, and you're going to be able to utilize all that. Intel, I still love for gaming. Probably it beats it out a little bit from what I know. And then also reliability of Intel still is king compared to AMD. I always have less, um, not stability issues, but I just my Intel chips, I feel like they don't crash nearly as much as my AMD counterparts, even though the AMDs definitely are a way better bang for the buck right now.
yeah, yeah. I actually recently just got a laptop with AMD Ryzen 7 4800 series, and so it's working out good. I got it mainly for rendering videos and stuff, so I
Mhm.
yeah thought it was good. But no, I appreciate you answering that question because I'm not really a hardware guy so much as well. I understand, you know, how to set up a server, a physical server, you know, if I need to. Excuse me, but yeah, as far as telling or recommending, you know, the best hardware and everything, you know, it's kind of above me, you know what I'm saying? So,
Yeah, I usually can recommend stuff. It's just like I don't really like to a lot of times though. I'm just like, hey, this is what I'm using. If you
hmm,
guys want to use it, cool. It
yeah,
works great for me. Have at it. But
mm,
I'm such a desktop guy that I'm also really cheap.
yeah,
To be honest, I'm not bleeding edge at all. I don't have like a
mm,
Threadripper. I'm not even on the latest Ryzen. I think the most up to date Ryzen I have is the Ryzen 2 that I
mm,
bought on sale. I think I got a 2700X for about $130 when they were doing a blowout sale
okay,
and just drop in inventory. So a lot of my stuff I build. I hate laptops. I just like building just a regular old desktop, throw a
mm.
heat sink and a fan in there, and I'm good. A lot of people, I know that rubs some people off the wrong way. I made a video about how I hate water cooling, and man, that was worse than I when I called Ubuntu the devil.
Oh
So
yeah, I remember
yeah,
that video.
so yeah, man. So yeah, there's you know, not every video's a hit, but yeah, those two I could look back on. I'm like, well, my opinion hadn't changed. I
Yeah.
still hate water cooling with a passion, but you know, you know, for some folks out there, if it floats your boat, then hey, have at it. I'm not here to say don't do something. I'm
Mm.
just I just like, hey, this is what I like.
Yeah, well, I got one more for you. Let me see where. Oh, it went past. I wanted to ask this last one. I don't want to hold Chris too long, you know what I'm saying? And then plus it's getting late for me as well, and I gotta get up for work. I know, you know. So, um, where was it? Where was it? It was one that I really wanted to ask you. Um, hmm. Oh man, I lost it. It was a. Hold on. Oh, it was something about a lab. What is a good lab? I seen it. Looks like it disappeared. I don't know, or maybe
Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
can't see it. That was
That's a good question.
yeah. That's what I was gonna ask. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so like when it comes to a lab, don't think you need X, Y, or Z for it. I think my first lab was like this throwaway computer that I just kind of rigged up. I think I don't even have, I didn't even have a case for it. I just threw it on some plywood and just bolted it down and just went, I said, okay. And then I just tried out a bunch of different things. So don't think you need to have new components. Honestly, everything in my rack behind me was all just servers that either were getting thrown away or some of them were just old desktops that aren't. I think I have an i3 or i5 third gen in there, which is pretty long on the tooth right now, but I still use it for VMs and just different things to try new stuff out on. I'm about to wipe out that because I think right now it's like on Proxmox, and I'm gonna get rid of Proxmox and go back to XCP and G because I'm just kind of sick of Proxmox. But it's always fun to experiment around. Just get some old hardware, go for it. And then if you find something that you can't do, then you know what to get. Because I think of the 4 stages of mastery. When you first start out, you don't even know what you don't know. And that's one thing when you're beginning, it's okay, but don't go and spend a bunch of money on a bunch of stuff because you're probably going to buy the wrong thing anyways. Just start with whatever you got. Build that lab out, go for it, and then as you learn knowledge, then you actually get to know that next step where you know what you don't know, and then you start moving into that, and then you can actually make some purchases with confidence and build out a lab that you can do whatever you want with.
Yeah, definitely. And there's always, it seems like it to me, at least in my area, there's always schools that are getting rid of equipment or closing, and they have servers for cheap on the various websites. Craigslist, I've seen them on Facebook Marketplace. They have servers, for a little bit of nothing, so you can pick up something, and it's just something to play around with to at least get your hands on some hardware to test or whatever. So, and then also whatever computer you're using, you know what I'm saying, you can obviously spin up VMs as long as that processor is made for virtualization. You know what I'm saying, you can turn on virtualization, which most newer processors are. Then you can spin up a bunch of VMs, test out different, you can install whatever you want on it, so yeah. But I definitely appreciate you coming through, Chris. We're gonna have to do this again. I might have to bring you on again for whatever. We could just talk about tech or whatever, man. I definitely appreciate you, coming through to do this, man.
Yeah, of course. I appreciate you having me on, Josh. It was a lot of fun, man.
Oh, I appreciate it. Yeah, well, thank you guys for coming through. I appreciate everybody that donated to the channel. So I hope you guys got something out of it. Anybody that's possibly trying to get into IT. One other thing, I offer mentorship, so just email me. I can help you out with your resume, or help you out, just point you in the right directions on certifications and any knowledge that I know. I'll point you in the right directions if I find that information out for you. And also check out Chris Titus Tech's channel, YouTube channel. I think I posted in the chat. Let me post it again, but please subscribe to Chris Titus Tech. He's another Linux YouTuber. He does a lot of videos, man. He does Windows stuff as well. That's one thing I really enjoy. And one thing I wanted to tell you, I'm always recommending the debloat script that you push. I love that thing.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I use it here at the house for for my kids' computers. Just
The
to
one
keep them
thing I'd
clean.
say, yeah, for anybody that wants to use that, fork it. It's just on GitHub. It's all open source, but it's broken down into subroutines. You can change it. You can do whatever you want. You can have it install your programs instead of the ones I have on there. It's been forked, I think, 500 times, but
Wow. Yeah.
well worth it. Just fork it, make it your own, and then it'll be your debloat script, and you can just do whatever, because a lot of that stuff I've taken from other system admin scripts and other debloat scripts just to kind of put together. And I think that's the beauty of open source and just sharing, is you just get this huge waterfall effect where as it goes through, it just gets better and better and better.
Exactly. Yep. Yep. But I appreciate you coming on, Chris. And hang on, I'm gonna stop the stream, but I wanted to just talk to you after this. Appreciate it, guys, though. And keep it techie.
Later, all.
Yeah.